In this lecture, we're going to look at the process of UV mapping. With 3D objects, applying materials can be a little bit more challenging than simply importing and loading a texture. When we import a texture, we transfer it onto that material. When those materials are applied, however, you may find some abnormalities. You might find that some of the textures may be stretched across a specific surface, and it won't be as even as you would have liked. UV mapping helps solve these issues by dividing your object into faces in a 2D layout. It's with this 2D layout that you can apply your textures to whatever way you want. An additional benefit of UV mapping is the map can then be exported to 2D software such as GIMP to create the textures. So let's have a look at how we can UV map our object. So as we go into Blender, the best way to show this would be to bring up the correct pre-made layout. So I'm going to choose screen layout and I'm going to choose UV editing. So in the UV editing screen, I've got my 3D view and I've also got my UV map. In order to unwrap our cube, the first thing we need to do is go into object mode and ensure that everything is selected, which it is because it's all highlighted. Next, we're going to use the hotkey U to bring up the unwrap menu. So I'm going to press U, and now I have a series of options. Unwrap, Smart UV Project, Light Map. We've also got ones down here such as Cube Projection, Cylinder and Sphere. Project from View, which projects a UV image onto our map based on what we're looking at. And from Bounds as well. For now, let's focus on Unwrap and see what that does. So, it appears to have given us a object of sorts. Let's click one and we can see that what it's done is it's applied all of our faces one on top of another. This is fine if we're going to install a uniform style texture to our cube, but maybe we don't want that. Maybe we want to apply specific parts, specific colors to specific parts of our cube. Well, I'm going to press Ctrl Z several times to undo the UV unwrap. I'm going to press U again, and now I'm going to try Cube Projection. Let's see what happens when we press Cube Projection. Very interesting. So now we have not one but 3 visible cubes. If we grab one, we can see that these are mixed in terms of where they're placed, but we can see that we have a little bit more depth. Let's undo that again, and we'll try this time. We'll press U, then Smart UV Project. Now we get a series of options, so we'll click OK just for now because it's an example. And now this is interesting. Now we can see that we've got all 6 of our faces in different parts of our UV grid. This is much better. This is what we want. Now we can apply textures to each face individually. What we can do here is we can go to UVs and we can go to Export UV Layout. If we press Export UV Layout, we can export it as just about anything. So we've only got 3 options at the moment, but we've got PNG, Encapsulate PostScript and Scalable Vector Graphics. All of these have their advantages, but PNG is by far the best because with a PNG layout you can do perhaps the widest range of tasks. So we're going to call this Test Cube UV, and export. And there we go. So now we've exported this UV layout as an image. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up 2D software. So you don't have to follow this bit, but I'm going to open up GIMP, which I do suggest you download because it's completely free. Just waiting a minute for that to load up. Notice that it may take a while, and sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But whatever objects you use, there's always a whole variety of ways that you can unwrap it, and it's just experimenting to find which unwrap is best for what you want to do. The reason why GIMP's taking so long is probably because it's updating and I haven't actually used it for quite a while at this point. But there we go. So we've got our GIMP software up. I'm going to maximize the program, and then I'm going to File, and we don't have, if we look across, we don't have any import options, but then we don't really need to. We can just open our file. The better way to do this actually when you're importing UV layouts is, instead of just opening, you should open as layers. This gives you the opportunity to edit different parts of the mesh one on top of another to create more detailed textures. So I'm going to left click, open as layers, and I'm going to go Documents, Blender, and if we go, here's another tip for you, make sure you know where you're saving. So I'm going to have to go back to Documents, and actually here it is, Test Cube UV. So I didn't have to go into Blender, it's right here. So there we go, we can see it in the preview, open, and there we go, there's our UV layout ready to be edited. So now we can use GIMP to create our own custom texture for our cube, and then we'll export it back to Blender. So there we go guys, that's the basics of UV editing. In the next lecture I'm going to show you very quickly how we can export our UV image back into Blender once we've played around with it a little bit and see how it works. So in a bonus to this course you're also getting a little bit of a GIMP tutorial as well as Blender. Thanks guys, hope to see you in the next lecture.